Heartland. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Over the past 2 weeks, we've examined the Obama administration's push to develop a new generation of nuclear power plants. Last week, Obama pledged $8.3 billion in loan guarantees needed to build the nation's first nuclear reactors in nearly 3 decades. But this is not the only controversial energy project being promoted by the White House. Earlier this month, Obama announced a major initiative to develop so-called clean coal technology.
That the United States is the Saudi Arabia of coal. And that's because, as I said, it's one of our most abundant energy resources. If we can develop the technology to capture the carbon pollution released by coal, it can create jobs and provide energy well into the future. So today, I'm announcing a carbon capture and storage task force that will be charged with the goal of figuring out how we can deploy affordable clean coal technology on a widespread scale within 10 years. And we want to get up 10 commercial demonstration projects, get those up and running by 2016.
President Obama went on to acknowledge there's some skepticism about coal can ever be clean. He didn't mention that advocates of coal mining have been pushing so-called clean coal schemes for over a century. The journalist and cultural historian Jeff Biggers explores the myth of clean coal in a new book on the secret history of coal mining in the president's home state of Illinois. Jeff Biggers' family has lived in southern Illinois for 200 years. In 1999, his family's 150-year-old log cabin and 200-year-old settlement at Eagle Creek was destroyed by several strip mining operations. In a moment, Jeff Biggers will join us in the studio, but first we turn to a short video produced to promote his book, Reckoning at Eagle Creek, the secret legacy of coal in the Heartland.
I stood with my mother and uncle at the rim of lunar expanse. It looked like an earthquake had devastated the area. A coal mining company had bought most of the holler, where my family had lived for 2 centuries, along Eagle Creek in the Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois, and blasted away the old home place. You see, my granddaddy had been a coal miner, but this work now was the dominion of anonymous heavy equipment operators who plowed the wound of the strip pits into scabs and then just disappeared. The more I stood at the abyss of this strip mine and watched the frenetic pace of the bulldozers, the more I became convinced I had stumbled onto the scene of a crime in Eagle Creek. We had literally stripped away the most troubling issues of the coal industry from our historical memory. We never discussed the fact that Native Americans, such as the Shawnee and our hollers, had been removed as part of a national policy by Thomas Jefferson, or that the first coal industry in the land of Lincoln and Obama had been launched with legal black slaves, or that the environmental havoc unleashed by strip mining had not only poisoned some of our most diverse forests and waterways in the Heartland, but also wiped out our families. Coal had created a stunning anatomy of denial in every generation, including today. Clean coal was simply another motto that had been peddled in Chicago since 1895. At the crossroads of the great American experience, here in the Saudi Arabia of coal, we were hiding a 200-year-old secret legacy of coal in the American heartland, a legacy that started with Eagle Creek.
The journalist and cultural historian Jeff Biggers joining us here in New York. His new book, Reckoning at Eagle Creek, The Secret Legacy of Coal in the Heartland. We welcome you to Democracy Now! And thank you for walking the hour in New York, walking through the snowy streets. But you made it.
The gentle, beautiful streets of New York. It's great to be back.
Well, this is quite a tour de force, Reckoning at Eagle Creek. Take off from where you were speaking in the video about the significance of coal and what you heard just before, and that is President Obama talking about coal and the United States as the Saudi Arabia of coal and the potential, he says, that represents.
You know, my prologue is called Welcome to the Saudi Arabia of Coal, Mr. President. And I think it's really one of the saddest scandals we have in our country, that any discussion about so-called clean coal never includes the staggering human and environmental cost. You know, a young man in the 1890s named Francis Peabody, a young coal peddler, of course went on to create the world's biggest coal company, was taking out ads for clean coal, smoke-free clean coal, in the Chicago Daily Tribune in the 1890s. And for the past century, we've had to deal with this incredible scandal, this outrageous, egregious human rights violations, the nightmare of the coal industry in the coal fields of America. And I think that is a reckoning our president needs to have, as the rest of the nation, of, you know, the dirty and the deadly reality of our coal policy.
Well, tell us that history. Give us a thumbnail sketch.
Sure. You know, what I found out was the decisions today to allow the coal industry to operate in whatever cost it takes to get that coal, at whatever expense. You know, we know, of course, about mountaintop removal in Appalachia, but the rape of Appalachia, as Harry Cottle wrote in his great classic, Night Comes to the Cumberland, actually came from Illinois, in my neck of the woods, that we've been dealing with strip mining since the 1850s. But Amy, if you go all the way back, when I looked at this amphitheater of death of my family, this massive strip mining thing that destroyed one of the most diverse forests in our nation in the Heartland, I realized that our coal mining policies go all the way back to the removal of Native Americans that we never talk about with Thomas Jefferson. It goes back to legal slavery. Here we are in Black History Month, and no one ever talks about the fact that the coal industry, like the vicious tobacco industry, began with black slaves, and that stretched into Illinois. Even in the land of Lincoln, we had legal slavery working in the coal mines, and it was my people in the backwoods who was running the anti-slavery movement to stop it. And for the next century and a half, we've been having to stand up to big coal as well through our workplace safety movements with the unions, of course, and Mother Jones is buried in Southern Illinois, to now our incredible environmental movements, to now having to stop these horrible coal-fired plants, and of course the new bridge to nowhere with the future gen carbon capture and storage plant.
Talk more about Eagle Creek.
Eagle Creek is all the way tucked into the southeastern corner of Illinois. You know, the Wisconsin glaciers didn't arrive to this part of Illinois. We think of Illinois as Chicago and corn, but the bottom third are these wonderful, gorgeous, shiny hills. It's the bridge between the Cumberlands and the Ozarks. And there was the earliest crossroads of the American culture. It's where everybody was going to the west to discover the outside territories, the Northwest territories. And here my people came in the 1800s, literally in 1805, as some of the earliest people, part of a woodland culture from Appalachia. And this kind of woodland culture was very related to the land. It was a culture that understood the diversity of the area, that understood that we could make a living throughout the region. Unfortunately, our property sat on 5 seams of coal. So when they created the Illinois Wilderness Act, which protected everywhere in this region where my family lived, there was a little loophole because we had 5 seams of coal, and they pulled out 1 million tons of coal from our homestead, our historic homestead, enough to power America for 4.5 hours. That was the cost of 200 years of incredible history in our heritage.
The Native Americans and the history of coal.
You know, Thomas Jefferson went off to England, of course, in the 1780s and 90s, and he realized when he saw the steam power shovel and the discoveries of James Watt that just that little peck of coal could do more work than a horse. And so he came back and he really accelerated our earliest coal industry, of course with African slaves. But the problem was these stones of fire, this coal was sitting underneath all these Native Americans in the Ohio River Valley and of course in Appalachia. He sent Lewis and Clark west, not simply to discover the West,